For this speech, I'm going to discuss why the United States should intervene in the Middle East. For centuries, the Middle East has been uncontrollable chaos. The fighting has seemed to be unstoppable on its own, with no possibility of peace. Ever since the turn of the millennium, actions in the Middle East have only become more disastrous. Terrorist groups such as ISIS and Al-Qaeda have grown immensely since their attacks in 9/11 more than 15 years ago. In the past year, they've been deploying major attacks nearly every few weeks, attacking major countries in the world to defend and gain support in their radical Islamic beliefs. To make matters worse, Syria is in a civil war between the dictatorship of the Assad regime versus rebellious citizens who just want freedoms that the rest of the world would take so much for granted. Rebels are having more and more trouble escaping to outside countries, such as Turkey, who are cutting them off from entering. The United States, as well as other powerhouse countries in the world, need to do more than monitor the Middle East. They need to intervene in Syria to bring an end to ISIS and other dangerous groups in the area. If they do not, these radical groups could continue to grow. Who knows where the progression would end, or how much power they'd be able to control over the rest of the world. One strong difference between what was going on in the Middle East over many centuries and what has happened over the past decade or so is that more and more problems have been growing as more chaos has grown and authority has declined. In his article, Paul Starr discusses what is happening in only just Syria. Two distinct, albeit overlapping wars are taking place in Syria: the war between rebel groups and the Assad regime, which the regime seems to now be winning, and the war in which Allied forces are trying to roll back and destroy ISIS. When examining your outline, you can see on the first chart different ISIS attacks as well as countries where ISIS has established provinces. Although ISIS's attacks have taken place all over the world, all of their provinces primarily are placed in the Middle East. With continued U.S. non-intervention, these radical Islamic groups could continue to grow at the rate they've been doing, causing a huge catastrophe for the entire world. Even this year, ISIS has been able to bomb and attack more sites than ever, killing many people but hardly sacrificing any. It is impossible to continue to try and defend against these kinds of people when they have soldiers sacrificing their own lives to kill huge amounts of people. We must instead attack the source that is causing people to organize and complete these attacks before they only get worse. As Friedman puts it in his article, without an equitable resolution of the Syrian civil war, ISIS will continue operating freely in Syria and expanding its brand with ease to other destabilized countries. With this growth, these groups will grow larger, allowing them to do more and gain more power. Although it is difficult to show the size of an illegal and underground group like ISIS, this second graph on your outline shows the growth in their social media content. This graph shows that ISIS has grown exponentially in recent years and will probably only continue to grow more as they become more powerful. The United States, as well as other powerhouses in the world, need to cut this off from happening. To continue, there are other reasons why it would be rational for the United States to not intervene in Middle Eastern issues. For one, it is inhumane. A civilized country like the United States cannot and should not let a desperate country like Syria suffer. It has always been the role of the most developed countries in the world to protect and maintain peace in the world, not just worry about the safety of themselves. Another more direct reasoning these wars affect the United States is because of the belief that what one country does will eventually affect other countries. ISIS is quickly gaining power, allowing them to increase the quantity and quality of their attacks. As the New York Post states in an article, President Obama has a choice. He can either destroy the Islamic State group in Syria and Iraq, or see the Islamic State bring its war to America. This quote is saying that if nothing is done to stop these radical groups in the Middle East, then they will only continue to gain strength. They will eventually have the power to attack or even declare war on the United States. The United States needs to protect its citizens. With all the extremist groups in the Middle East that despise the Western world, the United States cannot isolate from them and let them grow stronger. They must instead attack them directly to protect the United States and the rest of the world from all the threats these groups hope to one day complete. If these extremist groups are not destroyed, who knows what they could do or how powerful they could become. Moving forward, a third reason the United States should intervene in the Middle East can be seen by comparing the situation to past historical events and learning from the mistakes. Just as before World War II, the United States decided to not intervene until they were directly attacked by Japan in Pearl Harbor. Similar to what Bashar al-Assad is doing in Syria today, Hitler was exterminating many of his people before growing more power and continuing to attack other countries. It was not until the United States finally intervened that Germany and its supporters began losing power. Because of how much power the opposition had gained by then, many more American soldiers died in World War II than there needed to be. When looking back at the current Assad regime in Syria, not only are they strengthening a dictatorship in Syria without any external intervention, but they're also now getting support from outside countries. For example, Russia is now bombing anti-Assad rebels in order to keep the regime in power, something that much of the Western world does not agree with. For a country that has worked so hard to maintain democracy throughout the world, isolationism seems to be such an irrational and immoral thing to do. To make matters worse, Russia is now trying to get countries such as Israel and Iran to support them and make allies. If nobody intervenes with this, they'll only continue to grow stronger. To conclude, the United States cannot simply watch and monitor the Islamic State. These Middle Eastern radical groups are continuing to attack more often and also to a higher degree. The United States, as well as other powerhouses in the world, must declare war on these groups and do what they can to weaken them. They must force them to forfeit before more innocent people are killed, and these groups continue to gain support just as in World War II. As the New York Post puts it, either we destroy the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, or the Islamic State will come for us at home. The choice for President Obama is not whether we should fight the Islamic State on the ground, but whether we want to do so on its home base or ours. To me, the answer is evident.